Casa Bonita.
Casa Bonita.
What's
So,
this?
you ever been to Casa Bonita?
I heard that the South Park guys bought it a few months ago.
Yeah. You're a huge South Park fan.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know about now, but you were
I still watch
the
the new episodes.
biggest South Park fan when we were growing up.
Yeah.
Like, you could literally quote like any episode word for word at any point.
Yeah.
You could see the scene and be like, oh, this is what he's gonna say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I figured you would have heard something about this, but maybe not. Yeah, so the South Park guys just bought it. Trey Park, what's their names? Matt Stone and Trey Parker. Yeah. But I guess the employees are not happy with them.
Like they're bad bosses.
Yeah, so far, apparently.
Ooh, that sucks.
Well, they're not getting paid what they were promised they would be paid, apparently.
So they were like promised raises when they bought it?
Well, so from my understanding, they were promised full-time jobs at like $14 an hour plus tips. I think that was the number. And then what they did was they've only been open like 3 or 4 days a week. So everybody gets like 20 hours and it's a flat rate of $30 an hour, no tips, which apparently is worse. I haven't really worked out the math. I don't know how much they're getting in tips, so it's kind of hard for me to do that. But a lot of them are very unhappy about it. Like 50 of them got together and like put together a letter.
Well, yeah, that's
for them and presented it to them. So like,
I think that's actually a very nuanced question about labor. Actually, I think this is a very interesting thing to look at because servers make a lot when they make a lot.
And they make a lot in tips.
Yeah. And they don't make much when they don't make much. You know, they have down seasons, times when people aren't going out as much. But when they make money, they're making more money than an hourly person can really imagine. And it's kind of strange, the difference between back of house and front of house, you know. There's a literal class difference. But they're still, you know, workers. And if they're saying that they're making less than they were before, it does seem like an interesting thing is being brought up, because if you think about it, $30 is a pretty fair wage, unless the cost of living in that area is like insane.
That's why I was like, the jump from 14 to 30 seems like a big jump, but I've heard of people who work at restaurants down here making like fucking extremely low amounts.
200 a night.
Yeah.
You know, from tips.
But I mean, like the actual wage, I've heard.
The wage is $9.
Yeah. And then what's the fucking minimum wage right now?
It's 13 something.
Yeah.
That's for untipped wage.
That's still not. See, the jump from 14 to 30 still seems pretty huge.
Yeah. And if you think about it, if it's the entire restaurant, including back of house, think of all the people that just got a huge fucking pay raise, you know? I don't know what they were making before. Maybe it was $18 an hour. Restaurant back of house workers don't get paid much more than that in Colorado, from what I've seen. Like on the high end, you're making $18, $19 an hour if you're a back line cook. And that's like almost doubling your wages for anybody who's working back of house. But I could definitely see that like being like cutting a lot of other people's wages in half. But that's like one of the problems with restaurant businesses is it's a very unfair, and they like, I think that's it. It's an unfair system. And I think that enables bosses to pit people against each other in a way, you know, because I've seen a lot of back of house people be resentful of front of house people for getting tips. And that makes it impossible to form a union, you know. If half of your fucking business doesn't like the other half, or isn't interested in aligning their interests, because one half makes fucking 4 times as much and the other half doesn't make close to as much and doesn't like the other half because of that, you know, it's like kind of pitting your workers against each other. And there's an actual like restaurant society that like is pretty big and influential. They're like a lobbying group in the US, and they're the ones who try to keep like tipped wage a thing and keep it from all just being like everybody having the same wage in restaurants. I find it interesting that in this situation, the people who would have been making the most money in that situation, besides the owners, are rebelling now. You know, it's interesting because they're both working. They're all working class people, but because of the slight differential in how they're paid, it creates
Right.
schisms. You know.
Yeah, and yeah, it could very well be this group is very dissatisfied, and the other group might be very satisfied with this. I mean, I haven't heard what they have to say.
Yeah, we haven't heard what the line.
They're not on the news talking about it.
Dishwasher, what is he saying?
Because yeah, it was like a group of 50 people. They formed like a fucking rebellion.
Yeah,
like wrote a little letter,
like their little
sent it
front
to
of
them.
house union type.
Yeah, basically,
group.
yeah. To basically be like,
But
hey,
was
this
it
is
all
bullshit.
servers? Were there?
I don't know.
Because
I mean,
cooks don't get tips. Why would they probably only got paid more in this situation? I would imagine.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point because it would be only people who make tips
Yeah,
who would be making less.
yeah.
Right.
And in a high traffic area like a fucking Casa Bonita, yeah, you're probably taking home $300 or $400 in tips a night, which would average out to fucking $60, $70, $80 an hour. You know, of course, in the winter you want to get the same pay, and that's where, you know, kind of back of house is fucked too during the winter. They don't get as much hours. You know, like there's still a problem there. There's a lot of temporary staff that comes into front of house, but I think that's because of how it works. You know, front of house people float around restaurants. I have serving experience. I can memorize their menu. I can recite it back to people. I come in here, I make my tips, I leave. I don't care about what you're paying me hourly. You know, I come in here for my tips. So I'd imagine they probably don't have as much connection to the business as a lot of people who aren't making tips do, you know, because
Right.
you have to have more reasons to want to stay there than just for the money, at least. Like one reason I'm at the restaurant I work at right now is because it's comfortable, because I'm used to it, and it's comfortable, and it's a very homely environment. You don't ever have to feel like anybody's like breathing down your neck or anything. And that's what sort of being in a kitchen is, you know. Usually, sometimes you'll get fucking hard asses, but
Yeah, I haven't worked in the kitchen, so I can't speak on this. You know, just putting that out there.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about any of that.
I do find it really interesting. But yeah,
But-
you want to watch this video, or you
Yeah,
want
so
to?
yeah, this is just a little news, so you can hear it from them. You know, there's a little news clip. What is it again? Alt.
You just click on it. You
Oh,
don't have.
really?
You only have to alt if you paste. So just click on it normal.
When you're renting out your RV
Oh.
and doing it all.
Mute it for the ads. We're not doing free advertising.
Still muted.
So many are eagerly waiting for Casa Bonita to fully open.
The iconic restaurant originally said it would open in May, but has since only reopened partially, reduced hours. And there's another group that's getting very anxious for the full reopening too, and that's the workers. Denver 7's Rob Harris.
Okay, I already have to pause and say it's interesting that the news is only focusing on these workers too. You know, I wonder if, you know, the National Restaurant Society or whatever they're called has any influence on like news stations, because they maybe like what kind of subsidiary is this? Denver 7. So this is a pretty local thing. So maybe maybe. But yeah, so let's listen to this. Because the class interests would be with the owners of the restaurants, and they want tips. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when you see the news also saying that workers want tips instead of like, what about the hourly workers that were hourly beforehand, you know?
Spoke with
Didn't realize
employees who
this
say
was
the delayed
touchscreen.
opening of the restaurant he's making it harder for many of them to make ends meet.
Now they're taking a list of demands to the owners.
Like it would be
few
cool
days
if it
a
had
week
more
now,
RAM.
some lucky people from their email list get to go inside. But most of the week, Casa Bonita's doors are locked and security guards are outside. And employees here tell me that's causing a bigger and bigger problem for them financially.
We want to have justice for each other.
A group of 50 employees and former employees have formed hashtag We Are Team Casa. They delivered a list of demands to management this week. The top of the list is a plan to open 7 days a week, which will get them the pay
That's
and
fair.
the health benefits they expected when they signed up.
We were hired for full-time, 40 hours a week.
That is
But
absolutely
what we're getting
fair.
is 20 hours or less each week on average.
Yeah, fuck that.
And even some of us are making less than 15 hours. Now I have to choose between paying my rent, my car payment, or my car insurance. And that
Yeah, I'm totally on their side now.
Choose between those three
Because if this is the thing about hours, then yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mentioned that too,
Russ
but
Lee
hours
was
by
let
car.
go after contract disputes last month. They say management switched servers and bartenders to a flat wage of $30 an hour,
Which I'm
rather
fine
than
with.
$14.27
fine.
an hour with tips, which was the initial plan.
It's a drastic pay cut, 40 to 50% pay cut. And this is truly a masterclass in how not to open a restaurant. It really is. I've opened several restaurants over the course of my career, and this is by far the most important.
Okay, so now we have a guy who owns restaurants talking on the subject. I thought this was a bartender or a server talking about this, but no, we have the
Who
guy.
is this guy?
He's just a guy who's part of the group who's talking about how I've owned multiple restaurants.
Yeah.
I wonder what association he might be a part of that might have a vetted interest in paying workers a lower wage so the customers can supplement that wage instead of them having to pay it, which is why they do tips. So why is a restaurant guy talking about this? You know, why
that's
is
a good point.
why isn't this guy like, I've been a server for 30 years and this is the
Yeah.
worst way a restaurant has ever run? No, it's I've run a bunch of restaurants.
Yeah, that's a
Fuck
very
this
good
guy.
point. I didn't even catch that. Who is this guy even?
Yeah.
Reached out to
Like,
management
where the
at
fuck did
Casa
he
Didn't
come
even
from?
say his fucking name right
He
there.
sent us
Yeah.
this statement, quote, Casa Bonita strives to create the best working environment for its employees. This includes implementing the best compensation structure for all employees, not just a few.
Boom, motherfucker. So this quote is saying this exact same thing. They're saying that they want all the employees to be paid the same wage, which is fair because back of house people bust their fucking asses and they get paid half, a quarter of what front of house workers do. And it's a fucked up system, you know, because you can't tip the cook. You don't see the cook, you know, and his work isn't considered when you're handed your food. And if you think about it, like a big thing that causes this rift between front of house and back of house is that the fucking it's insulting to see someone who carries a plate that you worked your ass off to cook, bring it up to someone and place it on their table and get paid 3 times as much as you.
Yeah.
And if you're labor conscious and you work in a kitchen, you're aware of that. You know, it's not just like I can see a lot of people, they just don't care. They just don't notice, or they don't care. They're not that concerned with money, because that's a lot of people that work in back of house too. They like to just take things easy, you know. But also, if you're labor conscious, you see that, and it's an insult. And I think it's an insult. And this is a really good quote from the management, because they're implementing a progressive thing here, something that the National Restaurant Association Board, or whatever it's called, they don't want this. This is not what they want. They don't want more restaurants to implement this.
The workers with We Are Team Casa feel their concerns are not being addressed, but they sincerely hope to make amends and make Casa Bonita awesome.
It is gorgeous. It's fun. It's wonky and weird. It's crazy. More than happy to show it off at full capacity 7 days a week with lucrative operating hours. We're ready.
And
I asked
you see that guy? He's like crowded by the employees, but he never worked there. What is this? It's like a puff piece
Casa
for
Bonita
fucking
employees have created
restaurant
a petition hoping
people.
to raise community support for their cause. It's already gathered about 1,000 signatures, and if you'd like to learn more about this, we have a link to it and Rob's story on our website.
They need to give them their hours back, though. The hours thing is the real problem.
Yeah,
And I think what's happening there is the dude there is taking advantage of the fact that people aren't getting their hours, you know. Okay, I'm gonna check the cameras.
All right, make sure we're all good still. It hasn't cut us out of the episode.
Still going on that. Still going
Nice.
on that.
Fuck yeah.
It's gonna be the best one yet. We're like talking. We got all the stuff going. Cool. It's like a tiny bit, but I'll put this rag here. Stop that. Stop it for a little bit.
Yeah. Just have to keep checking it.
Okay, so let's get back to our dock.
Yeah, back to the docks.
So that was really good. That was really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I figured you would enjoy that.
Yeah.
I didn't know how much you heard about it.
Yeah.
Well, I figured you would
I
have a
didn't
lot
hear
to
anything
say
about
about it because you're very like labor conscious and
Yeah,
stuff
and
like
I work
that.
in a kitchen, so it's like
Yeah.
it's a good intersection of the few things I know a little
Right,
bit
yeah.
about. Like
You definitely had more to say about it than I did.